Today, I'm very grateful to have Ed Andres, and I never had a brother. Your son, Ed, your son was the closest thing to a brother that I've ever had, and when we lost him to suicide, uh, that rocked my world, and I really struggled to make that drive to your house when I interviewed you for this book, but I really found it healing for myself, and I know that you shared the same thing, Ed, and I just wanted to further that discussion, and I'm so grateful that you've taken the time today to have this conversation, so thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
And this is hard. This is really hard stuff, but I guess I want to start by talking about why you chose to break the silence around suicide, because obviously there's a lot of families that when this happens within the system, nobody wants to put a voice to it, and both yourself, Ed, and your wife, Janet, right off the hop said, no, we're not going to be silent, we're going to talk about this. Why was it important for you to talk about suicide?
Well, I guess the main reason was because of Justin. Um, when he had his first suicide attempt, which he failed at, um, he expressed to us, he came home to live with us for a week after that, and he expressed to us the frustration of not being able to open up and talk to people, because I think he felt nobody wanted to hear about his problems and nobody really understood what he was going through, including us. So yeah, we felt it important, I guess, in his memory to talk about it and make it an open discussion. Try and hopefully help others by talking about it. And not only that, after our group session with suicide survivors, one thing, very important lesson we learned there was talking about our grief was a healing process, and it was very necessary. So this also helped us with dealing with our grief.
Yeah, and Ed, you had shared with me, and I think it's in your story as well in the book, where you talked about how it was not natural, I guess, a little difficult for you to get into a support group and actually talk about your emotions. Do you mind just walking us through that process?
Yeah, it was some friends of ours that came to us and suggested that we join this support group. And at first I thought, well, this isn't really for me. I'm not the type to talk about things like this and be emotional about anything. So I was a little hesitant at first, but I felt that if it helped the rest of my family, I would join in and I would go along with them. So Janet and our other son, we all went to the support group, and I found it extremely helpful. I learned a lot of lessons there. We were in a group, it was a small group, but we all shared one thing in common, is we lost somebody we loved to suicide. And not only that, the two facilitators of the group, they're about our age. They also both lost sons to suicide, so they totally understood what we were talking about, what we were going through. That was also very helpful.
Yeah, no doubt. And you spoke a bit about having to get rid of some of those scripts around masculinity and to give yourself permission to feel and even to cry. Was it difficult for you to rewrite some of those scripts around masculinity or even what it means to be a real man?
Yeah, it probably was a little tough to overcome, but I really had no choice. Grief or my emotions overtook me. I couldn't help but I couldn't hold back the tears. I had no choice. I had to let them flow. And the more it happened, the more I realized this is natural. This is a necessity. I have to allow this to happen and let my emotions out. And yeah, then the more I found that we talked about it and expressed our emotions, the more the healing took place.
Yeah, and I mean you're a farmer. When you had all that time to spend with your thoughts, with your emotions, did you struggle to navigate through those emotions with all that time to think sitting in your tractor?
Yeah, those were probably the toughest times. The spring after Justin's suicide, yeah, I was out on the tractor out at the farm all by myself, and I just had to open up and just let the tears flow, because it just had to happen, and I couldn't help it. And yeah, I guess I came to realize this is normal. It wasn't normal in our society, but it was something that I knew it had to happen.
Yeah, and I guess our society also continues to put a stigma with suicide, also with mental illness, and there's still a lot of discussion around this word that's attached to suicide, and that is selfish. Do you find, after all of your experiences, Ed, that suicide is selfish?
No, I came to realize that I probably had thoughts like that before this happened, but I soon came to realize, seeing what Justin had gone through, this was not an act of selfishness at all. It was a mental illness that overtook his life, and he felt he had no choice, no matter how drastic this was and how much it was going to hurt all of us. He felt he had no choice but to end his life. And unfortunately, we didn't get him the help that he needed. Yeah, in hindsight, there were things that we could have done to help him, and we just didn't realize what it was he was actually going through and how painful a life he was living. When he once told us that he felt he may be bipolar, that was a new word to me. I had no idea what bipolar was. Of course, I understand it much better now after seeing the way his life went at the end, and doing a lot of reading after his death about bipolar. Yeah, then it all made sense. We could understand he was struggling big time, and I guess he just maybe didn't know where to go for help, and we didn't know enough to take him for help.
Yeah, and those are, I guess, two key things that you've alluded to. And yeah, hindsight is 2020. Are there, I don't know, any other things that come to mind, Ed, when it comes to maybe what you could share with other parents who feel like their child or loved one is struggling with mental illness?
Mm-hmm. Well, when we saw that he was really struggling, he was in deep depression at times. We talked to him. We said, "We can see there's a problem here. You're not healthy. You need to go get some help." And yeah, he recognized that also, but for some reason he just couldn't get himself to going for help. And in hindsight, we know that we should have just taken him, driven him to a hospital, and done it for him, because he was not capable of getting that help on his own. So yeah, I would strongly suggest, if there's any indication that your child is struggling with a mental illness and even having thoughts of suicide, take them for the help, because they probably can't do it on their own.
Mm-hmm. And blame is also something, Ed, that comes up quite frequently when you lose a loved one to suicide, whether that's with your partner, someone else in the family system. But you always said that between yourself and Janet, as a couple, you were never going to place blame.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was one of the things that we learned in our suicide survivor group. We were told statistics indicated that there's a very high rate of divorce when something like this happens to a couple. And it is because they blame each other for what happened. And I was determined that that was not going to happen in our family, between myself and Janet, and between us and our kids also. I think we all felt that we shared some responsibility in not having gotten him the help that he needed, but we were not going to blame each other, because we were already bearing as much pain as we could stand, and we didn't need anything added to that. It would have been too much to handle.
Mm-hmm. And do you mind just talking a little bit about how the grieving process was for you, and how you were able to eventually realize that it's still possible to find an element of joy in life?
Yeah, initially it seems there is no joy left in life. You are so overcome with grief that you can't even imagine that even. In fact, you even feel guilty if you happen to crack a smile or a chuckle at something. You actually feel guilty. How can I even think about being happy about anything ever again? Um, but time is a huge factor here. In time, you learn a new normal. You know your life will never be the same again because there's somebody missing in your family forever. But you learn to live with that fact and you learn to move on. And yeah, it takes years to realize that and to develop that.
And right now, I mean, it's mental health week, and that requires conversations like we're having now. And one of the things that I really admire and respect about yourself and Janet is that you took this message into your church, into your community, and you started to talk openly about mental illness, about suicide. How was that process for you, and what was the response from everyone in attendance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a community where it seems like we have an exceptionally high rate of suicide. We don't know why that is, but we have so many friends and neighbors who've lost someone to suicide over many years, this, of course. But um, I think because of that, the community recognized that there was awareness that needed to be made about it. And I think because Jan and I were willing to open up and talk about it, it helped others to be able to talk about it also. And yeah, it's so for a number of years, we held a special Sunday service where that was the topic, was suicide and mental illness. And yeah, I think the topic opened up and people were able to talk about it a little more freely and realize that, yeah, we have a problem here. If we can't talk about this, that's not good.
Yeah, and here being rural Saskatchewan, right? Uh,
Mhm.
and at the time, and there are significantly higher rates. Is there anything, I guess, that you feel is essential as a community that we can further do to strengthen these conversations, or just take care of one another, especially in these difficult times with COVID-19?
Yeah, I think just keeping the conversation going and not slide backwards. We got to keep moving forward and keep the awareness out there that this is a huge problem in our society, and we need to continue talking about it and just caring for each other and helping in any way we can to help others that are struggling with this issue.
Yeah, and you often say, be kind. I think you even have that on your fridge. Do you not? Be kind, because you
Yeah,
never know the battle.
that's right. You might deal with your neighbor on a regular basis and not even realize a struggle that they're dealing with. And yeah, so being able to get them to talk and understand what they're going through, it's going to help them to be able to talk to somebody about it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Well, listen, Ed, I really, really appreciate your time, your insights, and I wish both you and Janet nothing but the best. Much love. Thank you.
it's been a real pleasure talking with you again, and I thank you for including me in your book. It was a very huge honor.
Thank you, Ed. Talk soon.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.